Thank you so much for coming this afternoon. My name is Maha from Muslim American Leadership Alliance. I also have my deputy director here, Daniel Khan. I would like to introduce the panel that is here today, moderated by Avishan Bodinoud, followed by Alina Majid, who is actually second secretary from Permanent Mission, United Nations Pakistan, expert on climate, Barrister Dawood Ghaznavi, expert in environmental law, and a treat, Dr. Zaheer, who is here, who is an expert in toxicology, smogology, and who has probably written over 100 publications. So with that said, I would like to have the panel come. So I just wanted to say a few words, and then we will start. We are proud to be entrusted by the UN for the past 8 consecutive years. This year's theme, the Summit of the Future. Today we are convening on climate change, sustainable solutions, a special conversation on Pakistan. Maha is a 501c3 civic and community organization committed to promoting individual freedom, diversity, and to celebrating Muslim American heritage. Maha is dedicated to leadership through integrity, and as such provides a platform to people to share their individual stories and to speak for themselves. Maha nurtures emerging community leaders and unites Americans of all backgrounds to advance constructive solutions to extremism and human rights abuses. Maha is open to choice, creed, and embraces free expression, equality, and pluralism as cherished by universal ideals. We welcome also, for the first time, we are partnering with APPAC Foundation, and we welcome their board here and their friends that have come here as well. Dr. Pervaiz Iqbal, thank you so much for representing APPAC today to this United Nations platform. So their foundation has done wonderful work, and we will hear from Dr. Iqbal in just a moment. And so we're really extremely happy for putting up the Pakistan climate crisis case on this platform of the United Nations. And with that being said, I'd like to welcome our most distinguished panel, as I said earlier, Avishan Bodinoud, who's our moderator, Barrister Dawood Ghaznavi, Dr. Shakil Zaheer, and Alina Majid. I would also like to recognize Imam Ahmed Ali, the first Pakistani commissioner at the New York City Commission on Racial Equity. Thank you all for gracing us with your presence at this most important occasion. And I would really like to say a special thanks to Barrister Ghaznavi for putting all of this brainchild of this particular panel together. But before we start, I have some really, really great news. Can you all hear me? Yes? Okay, good, perfect. So I have great news for the people of Pakistan. Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, as you all know, the Terminator, you all know who the Terminator is, right? Who's the biggest voice in America, was going to be here. But due to his shooting schedule, at the last minute, he could not attend. However, just today, I received a letter from him, and it's really it's a remarkable letter. I'll read this letter to you all. So, thank you very much for inviting me to take part in the Climate Change and Sustainable Solutions, a special conversation on Pakistan event that you're hosting at the United Nations today. I wish that I could join you and your distinguished speakers and guests in New York for this important discussion, but I am in Europe filming the final scenes of my Netflix show, Fubar. I'm sorry that I can't take part in your conversation, but I want to thank you for the work that you all are doing to terminate pollution in Pakistan and throughout the world. Pakistan is home to some of the world's most majestic mountains and awe-inspiring glaciers, and it is vitally important that we work together to protect these incredible natural resources. I believe events like the one you have organized today will go a long way in building awareness of the problem and developing workable solutions to reduce carbon emissions both in Pakistan and abroad. Please keep up the great work and pass on my many thanks to the speakers, Barrister Dawood Ghaznavi, Dr. Shakil Zaheer, Avishan Bodinoud, Alina Majid, and also our partner organization today, which is APPAC. So that is from Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger this morning. Yes. So with that, I would like to call to the stage Dr. Iqbal.
We're at a pivotal moment for our planet. As the harsh realities of climate change impact millions, especially in Pakistan, Pakistan has suffered catastrophic floodings in recent years. Lives lost, homes destroyed, and infrastructure devastated. These are not mere statistics, but human tragedies and demand for urgent attention. I'm talking about a nation on the front lines of this crisis, grappling with the aftermath of disasters linked to the carbon emission of industrialized countries. The suffering in Pakistan is a humanitarian crisis, not just an environmental issue. Through APPAC, we have tirelessly advocated for relief and support of working alongside US lawmakers to secure vital funding for Pakistan flood victims. APPAC leadership, Dr. Ijaz, had the privilege of accompanying a US congressional delegation to Pakistan, including late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Congressman Tom Sazi, and Congressman Al Green, to witness the devastation firsthand. This experience reinforced a crucial truth. Climate change is a shared challenge that requires a collective action. We cannot ignore the responsibility of those who have contributed most to this crisis. I urge the international community to stand in solidarity with Pakistan. We must provide the financial and technical support necessary for recovery and resilience. This is not just a call for aid. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a call for aid. It's a call for climate justice. It's the greatest desire of APPAC to work together with UN for a sustainable future. It's our greatest desire to work together with UN for a sustainable future for those facing the harshest realities of climate change. Thank you.
Introduce our moderator, because our moderator is busy introducing everybody else. Avishan I've known for a long time, and she's absolutely brilliant, and I'm so honored that you could come today to do this. I would like, and also Dr. Ahmed, who is not here today, he is the founder of APPAC, so we wish he was here, and next time definitely. Avishan, she is the Chief of the Information Management, IMU, at the United Nations Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs and the Department of Peace Operations. She leads a team of data and information management specialists who provide innovative and strategic support to peacekeeping and political missions around the world. With over a decade of experience in this field, she has developed core competencies in artificial intelligence, generative AI, and data strategy, which enable her to deliver solutions that enhance situational awareness, performance assessment, and decision-making for peacekeeping political peace processes. She is also an Impact Fellow at Singularity University, a prestigious and selective program that equips leaders with the skills and mindset to leverage exponential technology for social impact. She holds a master's degree in Near and Middle Eastern Studies from the City University of New York Graduate Center, which reflects her interest and knowledge in the region. She is passionate about harnessing the power of AI to improve the human experience and further the work of peacekeeping and political missions. Her mission is to create a more peaceful, inclusive, sustainable world through data and information management. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we will begin.
Thank you very much. Because we have distinguished panel members here with us, and it's a true pleasure and honor for me to be here with you moderating this discussion. We will be discussing a very important issue which is very close to my heart as well. We will be addressing critical environmental issues facing Pakistan. And we will be discussing with our distinguished panel members on viable solutions and see how we can address this important issue. And this discussion is indeed timely because a key focus of the Summit of the Future, which is happening on September 23rd and 24th, right across from the street at the United Nations headquarters, will be addressing the impact of climate change with particular emphasis on vulnerable regions and countries like Pakistan. And also in my work, as Maha mentioned, I work in Peace and Security pillar of the United Nations. We work closely with United Nations Security Council members. And topic of climate change is increasingly recognized as a threat multiplier. UN Security Council has had number of open debates to discuss climate change, its impact to peace and security, and focus on tangible ways on diminishing the impact of global warming. So with that, I do not want to take too much time speaking. I would want to go ahead, introduce our distinguished panel members here so that we can all hear from our dear distinguished members. I'll start with Ms. Alina Majid. She is a career diplomat with Foreign Service of Pakistan. Currently, she is posted as Second Secretary at the Permanent Mission of Pakistan to the United Nations. It's an honor and pleasure to have her during this really busy time where everyone at the UN is just running around preparing for the GA. She's in charge of the Second Committee, and for those of you who don't know Second Committee, it's the committee that deals with economic and financial issues, sustainable development, climate change, and the UN development system. Previously, Alina has worked on the China desk in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I just want to mention that we are honored to have Alina with us, but she needs to be leaving at 2:45. So I mean, it's great that she got time to be part of the panel today. Our next panel member is Dawood Ghaznavi, an attorney by profession and author by passion. Dawood has been a figurehead of many prominent public interest cases litigated in Pakistan Supreme Court and High Courts. He has authored 3 books which are extensions of his legal work, and one of his books has been highlighted in the Washington Post and the New York Times as Amazon bestseller. At the same time, he takes part in many US-based think tanks and institutions like the United Nations to speak on a variety of topics focusing on Pakistan. And Dr. Shakil Zaheer, a true pleasure and honor to have him as part of the panel. He's an accomplished toxicologist with a distinguished academic and professional background. I must say, I had to shorten Dr. Zaheer's impressive bio so that we can all have the discussion. I mean, I really hope you get a chance to review the full bio. He holds a PhD in environmental toxicology and MSc in public health, and both MSc and BSc degrees in biology from University of Karachi. Dr. Zaheer is certified by the American Board of Toxicology and is recognized as a United Kingdom and European Union registered toxicologist. Currently, Dr. Zaheer serves as the president of Tox International Incorporation, chief toxicologist at Redwall Solution LLC, and is a toxicologist at the Ohio Department of Health. He is also professor at the University of the Philippines and a visiting professor at Aga Khan University. Dr. Zaheer has an extensive publication record with over 100 peer-reviewed papers and book chapters, numerous white papers, and more than 900 technical reports. He is a frequent presenter at national and international conferences and regularly contributes to public discourse on environmental issues as a freelance journalist. And his expert insights are often featured on radio and television programs. And of course, we also have Dr. Iqbal with us from American Pakistani Public Affairs Committee and Advocacy, Justice, Equality for All. And it's a pleasure and honor to have Dr. Iqbal with us, and we will also hearing some insights from him at the end of the discussion. So with that, I'm going to start with the first question. Your thoughts on climate change and its impact on Pakistan. Do we need to be worried? What are your thoughts? Alima, if I may start.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to thank Mala for organizing this event and for having me on the panel. I'll give a very short answer to your first question. I think it is well established that Pakistan is one of the 10 most climate vulnerable countries in the world, and we contribute less than 1% to global carbon emissions. The massive dimensions of the disaster we faced in 2022 demonstrate that exact vulnerability. 33 million affected, 1,700 lives lost, 1/3 of the country underwater. The total estimated cost was $30 billion, 8% of Pakistan's GDP. So the crisis is real. We are very vulnerable to it, and we need to be very worried about it.
Thank you, Alima. Dawood, what are your thoughts around this question?
About
The impact of climate change on Pakistan, and do we need to be worried about it? What are your thoughts?
from my legal perspective, I started practicing in Pakistan in 2011, and at that time I used to hear about, because my city is very much condensed around the industrial areas, so we always used to hear about air pollution. And since I started practicing, and in 2012 and 13, we start hearing about the climate change word first time in Pakistan. And we were not really immune about the word, but since it has been started happening in Pakistan, the Pakistani courts have become so active and taking part in that kind of conversation to get on and head on with curtailing and combating the climate change. So I really feel that Pakistan judicial side is very active and very strong when it comes to climate change. So that's what the change I see in Pakistan about the judiciary side of it. That's what I see.
Thank you. And Dr. Zaheer, what are your thoughts from your perspective and your expertise?
I want to thank for inviting me. I would not touch on politics or the judicial. I will mostly, I will stay within my expertise. And what I see, the climate change is an extremely important issue for Pakistan. There are issues, not only when we talk about climate change, a lot of time we think that it is only the temperature which is the issue, and carbon emission is the issue. But what we don't see, or we largely ignore the human cause, just because of the fact of the environmental, climate change, which is resulting in issues which were never or not before earlier. For example, the fog or the smog, the inversion which we used to have before is a regular inversion. Now we see a temperature inversion, which is a huge issue, which are resulting in almost 150,000 lives every year in Pakistan, and over 1.2 million people die in India. So we have to think through this, not only the fact that it is the water issue, which we'll be talking about in little more detail during our discussion. I want to, in this icebreaker, want to just say that it is not only limited to carbon emission or the rise in temperature, rather it has issues which goes in every facet of our society, and we have to deal with them accordingly.
Everyone, and thanks very much to Maha and in collaboration with APPAC for this event today, and thank you Avishan from the United Nations side. It's really important, which I explained before, about the combination of climate change and judicial activism which has been involved in climate change. Globally, if you see today, there are many plethora of cases which has been connected with the climate change, and majority of American cases, when we talk about environmental law, it has become a strong judicial and political activism when it comes to climate change. And in Pakistan, what I have experienced from the last 10 years, courts have become very active whenever it comes on the climate change in order to curb and combating climate change. And it's very important to understand that in 2012, it was the time when Pakistan first time came up with a climate change policy. 2012, that's what it says. And they had a framework as well to implement that policy. But this is very unfortunate to understand that since 2012 until 2015, when the first person, agriculturist Lagari, when he reached out to the High Court, the implementation of that policy was not on the table. Lagari was an agriculturist. He reached out to the High Court, and the interesting fact happened was that his case was taken as an inquisitorial manner petition, and the main topic in which he put up before the court was it was more conserving water and at the same time heating the resilient crops, and the kind of weather patterns were changing. The Pakistan, agrarian land country, is very much concerned how we're going to move forward when the policy which has to be implemented has nothing done by the Pakistani government. So the biggest thing which Pakistani court did, which I've never seen in many other cases in around the globe, that Pakistani court came up with a climate change commission. So with that climate change commission, what the court did was they tried to implement that framework within the boundaries of the court jurisdiction. So the Climate Change Commission was the first time ever made up in Pakistan, and with that commission, majority of the ministries and the departments which were interconnected with that topic as a climate change took part in that commission. So that commission, surprisingly, 66% of the framework which the government had to do from that policy has been done by the courts. So this is how Pakistani court played their part in the climate change. And that's a very phenomenal thing when it comes to the Pakistan judicial side. And then on top of that, since then, I have seen that Pakistani courts have become so active. Every court and every time within 1 year, 4 to 5 cases always come before the Supreme Court and the High Court, completely working on the climate change issue. So I really thank two Pakistan Supreme Court justices who are really making a huge contribution towards the climate change, and it's synthesizing this topic. One of them is Justice Mansoor Ali Shah, and second one is Justice Aisha Malik. So I really feel that United Nations must recognize their efforts, how they are combating climate change through courts. So that's what I need to talk about the climate change and the Pakistan judiciary, how they're playing their part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Albert. The Pakistani's priorities for rebuilding after 2022 flaws. What are some of those priorities and some of those efforts? If you could maybe tell the audience about that, would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. We all know what the steps taken in the aftermath of the floods. So the government developed first a post-disaster national assessment plan. Then they developed a resilient recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction framework, the 4RF plan. And a conference co-hosted by the UN Secretary General was convened in Geneva, which resulted in pledges of around $11 billion. Of these, around 60% have been received, and projects for $4.7 billion have been approved for implementation. Another $2 billion worth of projects are in the pipeline. And we developed mechanisms for the implementation of the plan. And I think that's the key thing, because we often lack in implementation. We make lots of plans, but implementation is poor. The mechanism that was established was 3-tiered: a policy and strategy committee, a recovery and reconstruction project management unit, which would look at the progress on the projects, and lastly, an investment partner support group, which would include all the donors who pledged money, and we would look at the progress in receiving their pledges, but also on what was being done with the money, and the projects which were being approved and implemented. So it was a partnership-based approach with donors, UN agencies, and the government, and this group continues to convene regularly in order to monitor progress. But with regards to the way forward, beyond just the 4RF, we also had a resilience component to projects, especially in the areas of water, irrigation, road, and rail transportation. These projects were estimated to cost around 13.5 billion, and this is beyond the 16 billion that was required for the 4RF. And we did not invite pledges for these resilience projects. So as a way forward, the plan would be to look at how to invite pledges for these. And beyond just this resilience plan, we have formulated within collaboration with the United Nations an adaptation plan called the Living Indus Initiative, which envisages the revitalization of the entire Indus Basin through a series of 25 projects covering a range of issues, like in the cleanup of the Indus River to promoting sustainable agriculture and fisheries. This is estimated to cost $16 billion over a decade. It's still very much a work in progress. The 25 interventions are in various stages of being fleshed out, and then of course financing needs to be sought for these. But there are ideas and projects underway, and of course what is needed is to turbocharge their implementation, which is of course always a work in progress. But this is how the recovery aspect is moving around after the floods.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alima, for highlighting some of the great work that's happening and some of the initiatives that are ongoing. Dr. Zaheer, I just wanted again come back to you regarding the health risks and the impact on local population, and why it's really important for Pakistan to have those investments to ensure the health and safety of our the citizens of Pakistan. So what are some of those risks? Over to you, please.
So if we look at the climate issue, see that the landmass of South Asia is only 4% of the global landmass. However, 25% of the total population live in that. So that's one of the major issues that we need to have some plan in place to provide them with what their needs are, because resources are limited. And if we exhaust the resources, then we will have a war based on water. The groundwater has sunken too low in almost throughout the Pakistan, where you could just dig 30-40 meters and you can get the groundwater, and now it's 100-200 meters you have to go down. So now, how are we going to sustain that? Sustaining that thing needs extensive planning. There are two things which I think needs to be done, is that retaining water, because this climate change will not only, when we look at the flooding because of the glaciers and melting of glaciers because of the high temperature, it also results in high evaporation from the ocean and resulting in very high precipitation, which is what I see as a glass half full, not glass half empty. In order to take the advantage where we are, we cannot have better situation. If we don't take those opportunities which are provided to us, we can actually have, at this point, Pakistan has only 3 big dams and 85 small dams. We need, several hundred smaller dams. I'm not talking about the big dams, or water retention ponds. That will not only recharge the groundwater, and also we have the issues with our wetland areas, because recharge of groundwater is not, most of the time it is not right on the top of the place where you are trying to dig. It is maybe thousands of miles away. So we have to identify which where those recharge areas are, and floodplains, and also these wetlands need to be recharged. So for those, we need resources and planning. And it is not that the people are not thinking about it or my ideas are unique. These are the things which are very common thing need to be done. Water retention is the key to sustain the next generation and generations after.
Dr. Zaheer. And that's very interesting, and I hope we can have one more question with Alima before she leaves on COP29. I know these issues keep coming up in terms of water resources, water scarcity. What are the expectations from COP29? I mean, we know it's coming up soon, so if you could maybe shed some light on that for the audience.
For COP29, finance is at the heart of COP29. The parties to the Paris Agreement need to agree on a new collective quantified goal on climate finance. We hear about the 100 billion that's expiring, and we need to agree on a new climate finance goal at Baku in November. Negotiations are ongoing on this goal. Of course, developing countries have their own perspective on what should be the magnitude of this goal, and negotiations are difficult. If I had to give a developing country perspective on what should be in this goal, it needs to be anchored in the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. Those that have historically contributed need to take responsibility also for the provision of finance to developing countries. It also needs to look at how the quality of climate finance can be enhanced. A lot of current financing comes in the shape of non-concessional loans. So they're giving you financing, but they're adding to your debt burden, which is untenable, and we can see an emerging debt crisis-like situation emerging. So it must look at how we can enhance the quality to look at more concessional finance, more grant financing. And lastly, we must see how the goal can adequately balance between mitigation and adaptation. A lot of financing goes towards reducing carbon emissions, which is of course important. But what about resilience building in countries like Pakistan who are not emitting as much? So it is like you are rewarding the sinners with financing, and countries like Pakistan are sort of left in a vacuum where we are not emitting, so we're not getting financing for mitigation. But what about for adaptation, for resilience building, which is often left out? And the needs of, there was a commitment to double adaptation financing levels from 2019 levels till 2025 next year. But that has not been achieved as yet. And the needs of developing countries go well beyond just doubling adaptation financing. So the new goal has to look at all of these three elements. One new aspect that has emerged is also that of loss and damage. Loss and damage, the three pillars of climate action: mitigation, adaptation, and means of implementation. Usually loss and damage was not considered, loss and damage financing. We had a historic breakthrough in COP27 with the establishment of the Loss and Damage Fund. More progress needs to be made on operationalizing that fund. So far it is not operational yet, it is not dispersing funds yet. What we've achieved so far is setting up the board, agreeing on the host country for the board, and current contributions to the fund are only $800 million. That is nothing compared to the scale of loss and damage facing developing countries. So at COP29, we must also see progress in the operationalization of the Loss and Damage Fund. We must also pursue additional contributions to that fund. So for countries like Pakistan, finance is at the heart of COP29.
Thank you so much for that insight. So my question now, I think it kind of takes us to the question of climate governance. And Dawood, in June 2024, the Law and Justice Commission of Pakistan hosted a conference titled Climate Change Navigating Climate Governance, Executive Action and Judicial Oversight. And it was in the Supreme Court of Pakistan. So if you could maybe tell us about a little bit more about this conference and what was the actions there, where like issues such as operationalization of fundings locally was discussed. What were also some of the topics that you think were really highlighted in this discussion in this conference? And Alima, thank you again for joining us. If everyone could give a hand to Alima for her participation during this very busy time. Thank you.
What I,
Please.
The Law and Justice Commission of Pakistan actually, they holded that conference, but it was being done in the building of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and it was being presided by the Chief Justice of Pakistan. And the main subject over there was, I mean, when we talk about the climate change, and according to the Pakistani Constitution interpretation of climate change, it not only comes air pollution, it comes about the wildlife, it comes about the conservation of water, it comes on using and security of energy. There are many different issues which Supreme Court of Pakistan and High Court are dealing on daily basis. Many of the cases in Pakistan which are coming now comes under the definition of right to life, under which many of these cases are coming forward. And if you see cases from the southern Punjab, many cases are coming on the conservation of water. We are really depleting on the groundwater, for which is like 60% of Pakistan workforce work in the agrarian lands. And the biggest depletion which is happening is the agrarian economy of Pakistan. So that's why courts are pretty much concerned how we can combat with the government of Pakistan on this climate change issue. And it has been raising concern in the government corners that how much Supreme Court has been active. I mean, recently there was one case when Pakistan, the most precious, hills are Margla Hills. It's in Islamabad. And there was one hotel on top of the Margla Hills that was called Manal. And Manal was one of the most exciting places for many Pakistan elite. And Supreme Court ordered that restaurant to be shut down. And the main reason was for the preservation of the wildlife and the kind of fume and toxic comes after this barbecue of food and utensils. So this is how the government, the court is playing its part, but I would see the weaker side government can show the concern that how much it's been damaging the Pakistan economy, but the implementation part is very bleak and very low. So that's my concern is.
Thank you very much, Dawood. And it's interesting because during one of my visits in Islamabad, I also noticed some of the challenges that you've highlighted in terms of the air pollution and beyond. And that's the question that I have for Dr. Zaheer in terms of the climate change, air pollution, and geographical factors that combine to this cause of smoke, fog in Lahore and Islamabad, something that I firsthand also experienced. So if you maybe can tell us more about this impact, the impact of this pollution, and also, and maybe if you could also briefly discuss the erratic monsoon patterns and what would be the impact of those on local populations and also the economy. Thank you.
I may not touch on economy, but we'll try my best. So, one of the reasons for this smog or fog is linked directly to the climate change and some of our own activities, which just exacerbate the condition. Especially in Lahore, and not only in Lahore but also in India and several cities in India, this is a huge issue. The visibility gets only a few feet or maybe even zero, and especially in October and November. It actually happens because of the temperature close to the ground is cooler than the top temperature on above. That results in very high humidity, and that high humidity actually facilitate aerosol buildup with particulate matter, heavy metals, lead, arsenic, cadmium, which are known extremely toxic chemicals, plus a lot of other organic and inorganic chemicals from our industrial activities as well as our just open burning. The major source of these smogs are open burning. And during this period in October and November, the rice fields are harvested, and then the stub or the residual are burned, which results in these smog, which caused in Pakistan at least 150,000 extra death every year. It causes issues from irritation of the skin, burning of eyes, tearing eyes, nose and throat issues, to COPD, to other more severe health issues, including cancers. These 2.5 PM 2.5, which means that the particulate matters which are in size less than 2.5 micrometers, when they are inhaled, they get into our blood system, and from there it can partition into brain, as well as a partition through the placenta into developing fetuses. And you see the developmental effect, you see some of the effects or on the neurological effects in developing children. As a matter of fact, with Ahan, we were planning to do some of these studies on looking on the people or villagers who used wood as the source of their energy, and especially in pregnant women, and look at what is the marker of development of newborns, as well as looking at what are the chemicals in the cord blood, and then look at the especially development of brain and circumference at different milestones. So these are some of the health effects. What are the economic, just if we look at the economical impact from only the health perspective, we are talking billions of dollars of every year, just in extra cost to treat those illnesses which become so prevalent in those areas. So I can only touch on that aspect of there are a lot of other factors which will also be important. Industries play a very major role. The burning, so open burning, not only the residual agricultural field, but also solid waste are burned. The solution which we are looking for are, can we or can UN or some other organization together with Pakistan, can we have incinerators, effective incinerators, where we can actually burn our solid waste at extremely high temperature, reduce the solid waste, and also generate heat to generate some of the power, which is another issue which Pakistan is in critical need. So there are, all these things are linked, and we have to think through how we want to harness all these things which are linked. Can we implement to stop open burning? Can we treat or teach the agricultural community to do no-till agriculture, where the stubs are left there, and then the next year it is just basically planted, the next season plant without burning things. So there are a lot of things which we need help in educating those communities when it comes to just these health issues and related economical, and how to prevent all these things from happening in the first place.
That was excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Zaheer. You highlighted some severe health issues. You also highlighted, the questions around how we can stop open burning, or some of these really important causes that causes health issues for Pakistani citizens. And my question is for Dawood here. What do you think the Pakistan court, what's their role in reducing the effect of climate change for our generation and for the generation to come? I mean, the issues that Dr. Zaheer highlighted, these are really huge, it requires huge economical investment to tackle some of these matters. In your thoughts, what is the role of Pakistan court here?
What strikes me, the kind of problems he's telling on the health side because of the climate change, I'm very disappointed from the government side because the way they are propagating and the way they are asking for help, how much they are implementing those systems in Pakistan which are gonna help. Very striking example is that during that Lagani case which I explained where the Climate Change Commission was being made, during that period in 2011, the Climate Change Act came into being, 2017. And what happened was with the Climate Change Act, under Section 5, there must have been a climate change authority and at the same time the climate fund. Would you imagine for the next 7 years, there was no climate change authority and there was no climate fund? And think about, we've been going through the worst crises due to floods, and this act was itself not being implemented. So again, the Supreme Court of Pakistan intervened, and thanks again to Justice Mansoor Ali Shah, who picked up this case, and within a month, he gave the direction that the authority should be established, and at the same time, the climate fund, which I was trying to tell you. So I am really sad to see that we have become one of the most vulnerable country when it comes to climate. But what is our preparation? So I have a high hope in the Supreme Court of Pakistan, in the courts of Pakistan, because this is where they are projecting the best, I would say, the people an example that how we're gonna combat, this crisis. So I have a high hope that courts are gonna play its huge part rather than the government side. This is my point.
Thank you very much, Dawood, for your insight on that. I'm mindful of the time. I know we have maybe 2 more minutes, and with that, maybe I'll hand over to Dr. Iqbal to talk about some of the great work that you are doing as well in terms of the advocacy work and beyond.
Thank you so much. I'm the only person in this room probably is not an environmentalist, probably on the panels. But I believe the environment, climate change and global warming is everybody's business. And we greatly appreciate the work Maha is doing. And we also greatly appreciate that we are collaborating with Maha and to enhance the work what's being done. In the past, we have a little bit of history that we heard from Alina ji and Dr. Zaheer and Dr. Mr. Dawood Ghaznavi, that Pakistan is the fingerprints on the climate change is about 0.8% of the global warming. That's by the contribution to the emission of gases. But we bear the brunt of being the 10 most climatically vulnerable countries from the impacts of the global warming. That's a very serious number. So during the last floods in Pakistan, that was 2022, our APPAC made a very serious effort. Our 17-member delegate, we went to the Capitol Hills and we made a presentation to the Senate hearing committee in which we highlighted all these factors that we are facing the brunts of those of the climate change, which is we have practically very negligible role to play, and they should understand and they should come up with a plan for not only Pakistan but all those 10 top vulnerable countries from the global warming, come up with a plan how to help them resolve and handle the situation. Pakistan has a unique topography and geography in which there is a high glaciers on the one side which melt very fast, and then there's a heavy monsoons, as explained by Dr. Zaheer, that because of excessive evaporation, the monsoons can be heavy also as an impact of the global warming. And then because of the topographical situation of Pakistan, the whole area becomes a lake. 1/3 of the country goes underwater. Remember, we used to have the Harappan civilization and the Indus Valley civilization of Mohenjo-daro. They got extinct. Well, how they got extinct? Because of, if we look at that and retrospectively, we think most likely the whole area became a lake and everybody drowned into that. We don't want to drown into that. We are too many, just too many for that. Just too many. So we explained and we highlighted those, and these were well received, very well received, and I think we contributed, APPAC contributed very significantly towards securing the almost $400 million aid which we got from the United States. But our most important factor for us was to go and explain, this is the water, these are the human catastrophe, what is happening is not because of us. We are bearing the brunts of somebody else's doings, and others have to come up to resolve this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Iqbal, for sharing some of the great work and contributions that you have.
I'd like to point out that the climate change is not only what we see, as I mentioned. I have been working on mold and exposure to mycotoxin, which cause huge health effects. And what we are seeing, and I've been working in this area for the last 5 years, what we are seeing is an increase in fungal infection. Molds are fungi. So an increase in fungal infections in US, even in the US, and in other countries where we have this flooding, will result in much higher incidences of mold. And that would actually cause even more health issues in the region where, which is already vulnerable to all these climate change issues. There are, so when we talk about the climate, not only climate change, but we talk about the pollution. So my, in addition to climate change and impact on climate change, most of my work is on environmental pollution. We see a lot of things which are coming from industries, and in Pakistan, it is not that regulated. These are dumped into the river or any water bodies, and eventually it gets either into the groundwater, or even when the plants are grown on those fields, plants can pick up some of these heavy metals and result in severe health effects. We need to educate and need some kind of strategy how to use our own television stations. There are so many now, but none, I have not seen any, to do any outreach, trying to tell the general public what are the impacts of certain things, why we are government, or what are the issues. We need to emphasize on some of the catastrophe which we know what happened in Japan, which is Minamata Bay, and some other historical issues with the industrial pollution causing severe neurological or bone which we started to break. It's called ouch disease. So there are a lot of things which we need to reach out to people, because a lot of people don't have any understanding, and it is my what I think, that the people are not dumb. They just need the right information. And how are we gonna reach out to them? How are we gonna provide those information? is just something which I would want to see, that the general public is aware of the issues, and then they of course will make a very wise decision. A known, something which you have the knowledge to make a decision. And I think that is the key to a lot of environmental issues, because the general public don't think what is going on and what will the impact of certain things, certain activities, or certain things they do and don't even realize. Pollution, we dump our wastewater into oceans and rivers. Have we ever thought what happened to the fish and all the benthic population of animals? How do they pick up? Where it eventually, what goes around comes around. So are we educating our youth, our population, that okay, we don't do this because this will happen if you do that? It is not only causing the impact on fish, and I work on microplastic working on in Manila Bay in fish. So we look into not only the fact that these are getting into fish and other animals which we consume, and eventually we got exposed to, but also how this is impacting our economy. These, the shrimp was one of the biggest industry. Now it is contaminated because all these, untreated water is getting in, and all these chemicals are in the shrimp and fish population. We cannot even sell those shrimps and fish to the rest of the world, because of course we surpassed the cutoff limit of the concentration. Another thing which I personally think that we are dumping just the wastewater should be treated, should be accumulated, should be used as a soil amendment, which is a huge positive plus to our agriculture. So some of the things with these, there are a lot of things which I can think of and come, but these are some of the major issues which I think I want to see some of the development, some of the improvements. And one of the major thing is reaching out to our people and letting them know what are the environmental and health issues they may encounter.
For sharing your insight, and there's really important topics that you brought up to the attention, and the importance of education. I think that's at the heart. How do we educate people, population, on some of these important issues, and also in terms of sustainable development goal, that's when really education comes in to ensure a full and comprehensive implementation of some of these global goals across the globe. So maybe with that, I see that, do we have time for Q&A?
We have a little bit of time for
Everybody knows it's the greatest humanitarian crisis in our recent time contemporary history. So recent flood in Pakistan is linked to climate change. So where everybody knows that Pakistan is contributing only less than 1% greenhouse gases emission, and facing a lot of humanitarian crisis, like $30 billion our country lost, and there are more than 8 million people displaced.
Mm-hmm.
So why the pace of pledges by the world bodies like you and like other world bodies are very slow? As Alina Majid told us that that still 40% of the pledges are in pipeline. So because that's why, because it's a third world country, the UN's they're doing some different policies to the third world countries, or why it's because it's a humanitarian crisis. And as a journalist, I know that over there people are facing real trouble in those areas which are being flooded in Pakistan in 2020. It's been 2 years. Thank you very much.
I think that there are three questions which were basically touched the same thing about the responsibility, that who we only as Pakistan is contributing only 1% to the climate change, global warming, especially with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and methane, and we are paying much more than what our fair share is. I mean, yes, I agree with you that third world, and if I say what we look like is one of the reasons. However, instead of blaming others, what we need to look into, what we can do ourselves first. If we implement, if we have something going on, if you ask for money and you don't show what you have already done, no one will give you money. But if you start with showing what we have done, you have done already. So as a scientist, when we write our proposals for grant, we do some preliminary research, and then we put those research in our grant that we already have done this, and we know that this happens, and we are asking for money to extend our research on other aspect of it or what. So have we done any groundwork at our end? That is something which we need to understand, that no one gonna give you free money, but if you can show something that this is what we are doing and this is what we have done, we are short of money, I think that the response gonna be much different than what we have at this point.
Dr. Zaheer,
Can I interject?
please, Dr. Iqbal.
But, as Dr. Zaheer said, that's exactly the truth. And we have to show what we have done. But I think we have to also raise voice and educate the West about, or educate the donors or the wealthier countries about, is that the mitigation and the palliative measures that we taken in our countries also are subject to the local conditions. Like in the Sindh area, in the province of Sindh, there are dwellings, there are houses, there are people are living in all those areas, waterways, which are actually the spillways. Those were the waterways which were used and made at one time through which the water will flow out. In Punjab, we still maintain that. Nala Deg, and there are a lot of other nalas, through which the water spills out when there is a catastrophic situation like this. But in Sindh province, they cannot do it because there are whole bastis and habitats, and people are living, they made houses and shanty towns and all that. And that is something, it's a part and parcel of the third world living. And we can, this is something we not convince ourselves. This is our problem, which really we cannot go by it. This is some problem we have to convince the other party that we are going to live with under these dire circumstances. We don't live in Paris, we don't live in Switzerland, where the things are different. Of course we have different things, and this is one of the projects of our APPAC and Maha, that we should keep educating our circumstances and the ground realities to them, that we have to live with these ground realities, and we have to work according to the very meager resources and very hard realities of our life.
So I want to add two things. I think I agree with you that you cannot import or impose an outside solution anywhere without knowing what is the prevailing situation and the culture. And throughout the history, if we look at our when we said our means the Western imposition of certain thing into any country of the world was always a disaster. It never bear the fruit just because they did not understand the local culture, the local practices and things. So I agree with you on that 100%. When it comes to Sindh, I think the climate change had made these once in a lifetime event, which were like flash flood and that kind of flood, which may be like once in 20 years, 25 years, now it is occurring almost every year. So that's the change they have to make. They started to live there because of some ease, or Sindh is very poorly or sparsely populated areas, and where you're talking are, but it needs to. I think that it will change when they know that it is not once in 10 years or 20 years or one in a lifetime event. If it occurs every year, they would automatically change. But education is the key, which I agree 100% that will make the difference if we actually put more emphasis and the money where the mouth is, and use some of the existing media or whatever sources we have, if we can utilize that and spend some money in that area.
Okay, Dr. Zaheer. And Dawood, would you like to also
Yeah,
share some
I would
thoughts?
like to answer the question about the climate laws. I think Pakistan is the most legislated country and the least implemented country. This is how I see. What she talks about, if you talk about the legislation, I think in America, the way they controlled air pollution is strict regulations and hefty amount of penalties. This should be introduced. That's where I see the punishment and penalties must be higher, and the regulations should be strictly implemented. And the second thing I see is that in housing sector, we have thousands of housing societies in Pakistan now, based and built on agricultural lands. We are destroying the wildlife. Wherever we want, we can make the housing society by getting very easy way access NOCs for that. I think that needs to be regulated and needs to be strictly enforced. So these are the areas which I feel that the penalty plus the amount must be hefty to control these things. That's what I think.
Thank you very much. I very much enjoyed this conversation, and I can stay here for hours, because as you can see, climate change is such a multidisciplinary topic, and our distinguished panelists are looking at it from different lenses. And that's just such a fascinating discussion. But I'm also mindful of time. So with that, maybe I'll hand over to Maha to maybe let us know for the rest of the
Don't
day.
forget to like, comment and subscribe.